Um, yes, we are recording. Welcome once again to Light Verse and Dark Time. We have
Just 1 second.
Oh, sure. Oh, I'm going to.
Alex, the
So
recording
most
is,
of
you
you
have to
know
be
how
quiet.
this works. I mute everybody, and then when it's your turn to read, you will be unmuted. If you can't unmute yourself, raise your hand, and I will unmute you. But the reason we have to mute everyone is so that there's not interference and stuff. So I'm muting you now, and you are allowed to unmute yourself. So you should be able to do it on your own if you're a reader. Okay. So before I forget, I want to announce our slate of readers for next week, June 7th. Hang on a second. So our readers for June 2nd will be Catherine Chandler, Pat D'Amico, Juliana Gray, Max Gutman, Bob McKenty, and David Yezzi. So looking forward to that, but also enormously looking forward to today's readings. And we are going to start off with a reading by Susan de Sola. Susan is an American poet living in Amsterdam. Her poetry has been published in venues such as the Hudson Review. Oh, and I'm muting everybody again who's not reading, so apologies if that feels rude. I'm sorry. The Hudson Review, the Dark Horse, and the Best American Poetry Anthology. She holds a PhD in English Literature from the Johns Hopkins University. She's a past winner of the David Reed Poetry Translation Prize and the Frost Farm Prize, and she's assistant poetry editor at the journal Able Muse. Her recent collection, Frozen Charlotte,
everybody knows it,
from Able Muse Press, has been reviewed widely, including at Light. And Marilyn Taylor, I'm muting you again unless you're here with a question. Did you have a question?
It's okay.
You're okay?
Mute me is fine.
Okay, all right. Okay, so once again, I'm delighted to welcome Susan de Sola. And Susan, when you're ready, please take it away. Oh, you're still muted. Hang on a sec. Hang on. Susan, you're still muted, and I don't know why this is happening. Hang on a sec. All right, I'm unmuting you all. And now
I'm unmuted.
Now you're unmuted. Now could everybody else just mute yourself? Because it seems like when I'm muting you, I'm doing something wrong this week, and I don't want to mess things up for our readers. So if you go to the lower left of your screen and just press the microphone icon and mute. I hope that works for everybody. And I'm going to mute myself too. Okay, Susan.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to read some poems from my collection, which is out from Able Muse Press. It's called Frozen Charlotte. And I'm also going to read some miscellaneous light verse. And I want to start with a poem that was published in Light. And it's about a conversation with a tobacco-voiced lingerie saleswoman that I had. It's called The Tear. The local sage of lingerie, I passed her shop again today. I need to ask her for advice. I've torn a hole in costly tights. It's quite discreet behind the knee. So will it hold, if none can see? Is it worthwhile to replace? Well, though it's small, it's a disgrace. My dear, don't wear a garment ever that has a flaw. Oh, never, never. I listened to this aging girl in hopes of yet another pearl. For just imagine you were in an accident. What deep chagrin you'd feel to have your holy tights revealed beneath the theater lights in hospital. You'd be exposed. But by what reasons, I suppose, would one believe that flaws inside one's undergarments override broken bones and loss of breath, concussion, burns, or risk of death? Perhaps there's no protection from fatality. If it's to come, let one's tenue remain exact. Preserve one's dignity intact. This is one's armor, she would say. It keeps old chaos far away. Do right by it. There's nothing sadder than a nylon with a ladder. A clasp unclasp or stay unstayed. Join in the fray, but stay unfrayed. If life somehow gives you the slip, at least you've not displayed the rip. Buy, but beware, be groomed, take care. Enfin, you are your underwear. This poem is also in my book, and it's an answer to Thoreau and Louise Bogan, both of whom wrote about the scarcity of blue animals. Bluish animals. Bluish monkeys, one small shrew, the cat they call the Russian blue, the purebred rat, and peacocks too. Yes, bluish on the land are few, but bluebird is defined by blue, and countless sorts that fly or flew. The largest animal's the whale. His head is blue, and so's his tail. So many fish are blue of scale. Being confined to air or sea, these challenge visibility, as though for God especially. For camouflage may make us blind, to earthly elements confined, while blue is heaven's private mind. For sea and sky have no real hue, its light they borrow shining through. Although they may be hard to view, a wealth of animals are blue. Do you guys remember flying in airplanes and the in-flight magazines with the maps of the world with all the red lines through them? British Airways. In the pocket of a British Air armchair, an in-flight magazine in flight flaps its centerfold, a cartography of routes. Routed in red, an empire of aeroplanes. The arc symphonic as Pisa leads to Tunis, Newquay to Cork, and Killarney can Kilkenny. Jersey mimics Guernsey, Glasgow ends as Carlow, and Nairobi swallows Cairo. Not imperial, yet imperial, the panoply of red lines like spokes of a colored umbrella, spreading out from London's hub, covering and eclipsing British mails, British rails, cleaving happy ozone trails. Now I'm going to read a cheese poem because I think we all need to write one. This one is called Thoughts on Cheese. A standing block of cheese is milk not at its ease. Seen through a microscope, it's writhing with false hope. It's swarming with bacilli that scurry willy-nilly. It seems like this must be the milk's finality, but is in fact a plea for immortality. Then I'm going to read my obligatory cat epigram, The Height of Pride. The cat's made of stature, a singular art. His tail in the air is his loftiest part. And my not so obligatory giraffe poem. Post-lapsarian giraffe. Although blessed in being tall, they are doomed at birth to fall. This is a bit of a longer one from my book. It's called The Up Rolling of Time. When we escape middle age, when the sun shines perpetual and the floor no more needs waxing, when the piles of papers don't pile up and we are just relaxing, when the pan never burns and the joints do not ache, when the laundry is self-cleaning and love is all we make, when the brows rose unruffled and the hair sheds its gray, when we conduct our duties, we'll run outside to play. When we escape old age, when the sun shines perpetual and walking is not taxing, when we return to how we were and waning conquers waxing, when the spine smooth and supple and the room stays at bay, when we can ditch our dentures, we'll have no more to say. When we grow a little smaller and lose our breasts and teeth, we will rediscover nursing and diaper what's beneath. When we grow smaller yet and cells then recohere, we will become as embryos and at last disappear. And the last poem I'm going to read is the first poem I ever published in Light. I think one of the first poems I published anywhere in the print era of Light. It's called Anacreontic. It's a drinking song. Polish the glass and heft it, bereft of what is left it. Ruby fluid consecrates fleshless remnants of the grape. Pits and pips and strangled stem, crush of juice, a hint again that we must cease with whining, for grapes are yet divining, twisting paths down to the ground, burying fury, dampening sound. Perhaps we reap that which we sow, but none escape the reaper's mow. Bury the groan, bottle the tear, have a nibble at my ear. Polish the glass and heft it, refilled with what is left it. Darkened vessel, smoothly slide the burgundy that burns inside. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you so much.
Thank
Wow.
you.
And thank you for the reminder of Light's print days. Huh? It's been a long road, and that's a great poem. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so our next reader is Bruce Bennett. Bruce is the author of 10 full-length collections of poetry and more than 30 poetry chapbooks. His most recent book is Just Another Day in Our Town, Poems New and Selected, 2000 to 2016, from Orchises Press, 2017. His first new and selected, Navigating the Distances, was cited by Booklist as one of the top 10 poetry books of 1999. From 1973 until his retirement in 2014, he taught literature and creative writing and directed the Visiting Writers series at Wells College, where he's now Emeritus Professor of English. In 2012, he was awarded a Pushcart Prize for a Villanelle in Plowshares. His poetry website, oh, hang on a sec. Okay. His poetry website is all the usual stuff at the beginning of a web address, Just Another Day in Our Town, all one word, .com. Bruce wants me to add, by way of introduction, that he published in Light, John Mella's Light, from the very first issue. But even before that, does anyone remember, he published regularly in Robert Wallace's series of Light Year anthologies. And I'm seeing some nods from people who remember those anthologies. In other words, these are Bruce's words, not mine. He is older than the poetic hills. Bruce, please take it away. I will try to unmute you. Nope, I think maybe you have to do it.
Doing it? Okay.
Yes.
Oops, no, I
Well, you were good before, Bruce.
just
Just
one
unmute
more.
yourself again.
go back to where
Okay.
I was.
That's
You're good.
Is that all right?
You're
Can you
good.
hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. It's great to be here and see everybody, even in a small screen. And while I'm being a little nostalgic, I wanted to add to Melissa's introduction that I used to talk with her at Westchester about the importance of light, even before she was in charge of it, because I used to write poems just because I knew light was there. And that's still true, and I think it may be true for a lot of us. So I really wanted to say it's very important to a lot of us, and I love these get-togethers on Sunday afternoon. Melissa has liked this first short poem that was in Light, so I'll read it, dedicated to her. Can't imagine why she likes it. It's called Epitaph in a Pauper's Cemetery. Though most considered it a curse, I tried to live by writing verse, which ought to make it pretty clear, not only why I'm dead, but here. And the second poem is also a short poem. Recently, a poet friend said he published a new book, and I knew what I was supposed to do, so I went to the site and ordered it. But as I was ordering it, I had this thought and wrote, Poets Helping Poets. We help each other sell each other's books by buying them. I just did that for you, and we're rewarded by our thanks and looks. But wouldn't it help if others bought them too? Past few Zoom readings for Light, we've heard some very wonderful parody villanelles, one or two of which have been about food, Barbara Cooker, J.D. Smith. Also, Elizabeth Bishop has this definite form of poetic immortality. Somebody just wrote me an email and said the art of Zooming isn't hard to master. So mine is called The Cult of Eating, and based on one art, and I'm dedicating this to my late friend David Berman, who was a world-class gourmet. I wrote it, I think, purposely thinking, how will David react to this? It's called The Cult of Eating. The cult of eating isn't hard to master. You start with something savory, like a peach, and chew it slowly. Then you chew it faster. Move on to chocolates. Act like a taster. Try this and that, and smack your lips at each. The cult of eating isn't hard to master. Then practice on a watermelon. Muster the strength to slurp it like you're on the beach. First, chew it slowly, then chew it faster, then spit the seeds and terrorize your sister and any kid or sibling within reach. The cult of eating's not that hard to master. Make sure you keep your mouth wide open. Custard is great for spewing as you give a speech. First, masticate it slowly, then much faster, till you can shoot it out in gobs. Disaster, drive gourmets crazy. Practice what you preach. The cult of eating isn't hard to master. Just start by chewing slowly, then chew faster. And I said I wrote that for David. I wondered how he'd react, and I wasn't disappointed. He said it was really, really disgusting. So here's another villanelle. For many years, teaching a course at Wells called The Maker's Craft, I used a poem, a anthology I'm sure we're all familiar with, The Making of a Poem, Mark Strand and Evan Boland. And the section on the villanelles begins with this statement, and I'm using it as an epigraph for my poem. Perhaps the single feature of the villanelle that 20th century poets made their own is the absence of narrative possibility. The form refuses to tell a story. And the poem's called The Things Impossible. Don't write a villanelle to tell a tale. They're not the form for narrative or plot. It's pretty obvious why you will fail. For instance, there's an island. You set sail. The wind is perfect and the day is hot. Don't write a villanelle to tell a tale because, well, you will have to see a whale, a wonder, but it can't be caught or shot. You see, it's obvious why you will fail. Say you're with her and you're both at the rail. I don't think I have mentioned it's a yacht. Don't write a villanelle to tell a tale. A magic moment you'll embrace. The ale your steward brought will just have hit the spot. But wait, it should be obvious you'll fail, since now her husband, who's been sprung from jail, is in that sloop approaching, and he's got... Don't write a villanelle to tell a tale. The thing's impossible. You're bound to fail. And finally, this has already happened today and will happen again, and we don't want to make her self-conscious, but we've all had the experience, and with luck we'll continue to have this experience of being muted by Melissa. So here's a very recent sonnet, actually from last week, entitled On Being Muted by Melissa. Sorry to keep on muting you like this, our host Melissa says with style and grace. We look into her sweetly smiling face and think, this is as pleasant as a kiss. Was any turnoff done with such aplomb? She should give lessons. No one need feel bad for saying something out of place or dumb. Instead, we're treated well, as if we had just shared our work with those who understood, applauding grandly on a tiny screen. Of course, we cannot tell if we were good, but how it pleases us to share this scene with poets in dark times, which would be worse if someone truly muted us and verse. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Bruce. I'm honored.
Yeah.
Definitely amused. Thank you very much.
Good.
Oh, all right. Nicole, speaking of muting, you are muted, so please be ready to be unmuted. Thank you.
Okay, I just unmuted myself. So you can
Fabulous.
hear me?
Thank you.
Okay.
Nicole Caruso Garcia is assistant poetry editor at Able Muse and a board member at Poetry by the Sea, a global conference. Her most recent poetry appears or is forthcoming in Diagram, Plume, Rattle, Spillway, and Tupelo Quarterly, and her full-length poetry manuscript was recently a semi-finalist for the Anthony Hecht Poetry Prize. She is fond of puns and hot sauce. Visit her at www.nicolecarusogarcia.com. And Nicole, welcome.
Thank you, and thank you so much for inviting me to this. I didn't really write much light poetry until I took Melissa's humor writing workshop at the Poetry by the Sea conference. Up until then, I wrote other forms or like little raps to amuse my students. So today I have for you some tailgaters. Some are Shakespearean, some are Pope or Marvel tailgaters, and I have some jiggery pokeries, and then I do have a rap at the end. So some of the poems are coronavirus based, or the Rona as we call it, and some are not. So I'll start with some tailgaters. The Wasteland. April is the cruelest month. It's been March since March 17th. Hashtag coy mistress goals. Had we but whirled enough and time, our social network posts could rhyme. Italy 2020. In fair Verona, where we lay our scene, we wonder about hydroxychloroquine. COVID kingdom. A horse, my kingdom for a horse, or Clorox wipes, or TP, far less coarse. And I must have had reopening on my mind when I wrote this next one called Escalation. Some rise by sin, and some by virtue fall. Some catch the Rona at the shopping mall. And then I have a jiggery pokery called Test Pilot. That's going to be, actually, some of these are poem of the week, and some are going to be in light. And some of the poems I'm reading today were in light at one point. So this is called Test Pilot. Mayday, formality, RX, remdesivir. Gilead's charting a course for the sick. COVID-19 and its fingers crossed antidote both sound like planets in some sci-fi flick. Anachronism. Making love? I cringe at the semantics, yet I have no better idiom. That saccharine tablet sucked on by romantics, though nobler than a vulgar euphemism, sounds absurd. You don't make cow from steak. If love's not there to start, you have a quandary. Sweet crumb. You don't make batter from cake. If anything is being made, it's laundry. And then this jiggery pokery is called Krav Maga, and it was from the Asses of Parnassus. MAGA blah, Donald J. Trump Putin, comrade-in-chief and cheap grabber of meow, humping Old Glory, his foreplay for speech is all flibberty-gibberty. Vote him out, pow. And then I have some more tailgaters. The first of which I'm really feeling today. It's called Spring. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May. Send Benadryl and Sudafed my way. Asterisk. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Dunno. With climate change, it's hard to say. Faux pas. To err is human, to forgive divine. But please, the monster's name ain't Frankenstein. And imperative. Sigh no more, ladies, sigh no more. Don't tell a woman, smile, then hope to score. Life hack. Oh, that this too solid flesh would melt. My inky cloak, a stab at looking svelte. And then the last poem I have is, it's a little rap that I had written. It's kind of a mashup of a couple things that were largely influential to me in my early childhood. One is Wonder Woman, and the other was the intoxicating power of rhyme and rap. Like specifically the Sugar Hill Gang's Rapper's Delight was always playing in my house. So I think that's when I first fell in love with rhyming and rhythm. And because so many rappers rap about, like, they're introducing themselves, they're hyping themselves, they're saying who they are, I thought, well, what might Wonder Woman as a rap star sound like as she talks about her origin story and her identity? So this is called Wonder Woman as Rap Star. And this is also from Light. Diana Prince, that's who I am. 141 after the war began, like Rosie in her riveting for Uncle Sam. I'm a woman just as super as any man. I come from Paradise Island, only women all together, but mighty Aphrodite couldn't stay there forever. I hitched a ride with the Major Steve Trevor and went undercover on a secret endeavor. I can bend steel bars, but my strength is equal. When spitting rhymes that slay, I'm that lethal. No heavy gold chains, but I'm regal fighting evil. I rock a red bustier with blinged out eagle. If villains shoot me, I'll deflect it. If I my lasso will reject it. When a wrong comes along, I will correct it. I'm a tough cookie and you better respect it. When a crook or a hater unleashes drama, I'll send him crying to his mama. Ain't gonna let the bad guys harm ya. I believe in peace, but I ain't no Dalai Lama. Peace and justice, that's my credo. And navy blue, I'm incognito. All the brutes in cahoots are gonna bleed, or I'm an Amazon princess in a star-spangled speedo. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nicole. I love hearing you perform that one. It was a great reading. Our next reader is the eagerly awaited Dan Campion, beginning with the first issue. 84 of the 91 issues of Light to date include contributions from Dan Campion, 235 poems and 1 book review. And Light has featured 72 more of his poems as Poems of the Week. That's an amazing record. He was the featured poet in Light issue number 22, autumn of 1998. His poetry also has appeared in the Journal Poetry, Rolling Stone, and many other magazines. A graduate of the University of Chicago, Dan has taught at the University of Illinois at Chicago and the University of Iowa. Bucknell University Press published his book, Peter DeVries and Surrealism, and he co-edited with Jim Perlman and Ed Folsom the anthology Walt Whitman, The Measure of His Song, whose 3rd edition was issued last year. And Dan, I am not seeing you on my screen at the moment. I hope this doesn't mean anything bad about your connection. I hope all is well.
Can you hear me?
I think you're ready. Yeah, I see you. Okay.
Yeah, okay. And can you hear me?
Yes. Loud and clear.
Okay. Thank you very much, Melissa. This is, like Bruce, I want to say Light has been very important for me, and I'm very grateful to Light. from the first issue, I want to read a poem that John Mella was so kind as to accept. And I thought the title was kind of appropriate for our current situation. The title is Home Remedy. The intermittent cough spells you could hear rippling through my favorite vintage album detracted from Der Rosenkavalier. A cough drop in the record cleaner calmed them. You can see how far back this goes. Vinyl is making a comeback, but record cleaner, imagine that. I wanted to follow that by the first poem that you accepted, Melissa, for the online light. And again, it seems a little bit appropriate to the strictures that we're operating under. Strictures at an exhibition, Pace Mussorgsky. Don't touch, don't crowd, don't talk too loud, don't push, don't stall, don't hug the wall, don't gawk, don't mope, don't grasp the rope, don't rush, don't glare, don't stop and stare, don't blurt, don't whine, don't break the line, don't slurp, don't chew, don't block the view, don't drift, don't nap, don't take a snap. All clear? Then start. Enjoy the art. Today is the 201st birthday of Walt Whitman. And so I have to read a poem from Ed and Jim's and my book of responses to Walt. This is a poem by Howard Nemerov called A Modern Poet. Crossing at rush hour the Walt Whitman Bridge, he stopped at the Walt Whitman Shopping Center and bought a copy of Leaves of Grass. Fame is the spur, he figured. Given a Ford Foundation fellowship, he'd buy a Ford. I met Howard Nemerov in 1973 when I was editing at Encyclopedia Britannica. And he fixed me with this gaze that I will never forget. He was quite an interesting individual. And I still have my Chicago Manual of Style that I used to edit his brilliant article for the Encyclopedia Britannica on poetry. So I worked on North Michigan Avenue, which I saw, you may have seen in the news last night. But I wrote my own Chicago Manual of Style, and John published it in Light number 35. The Chicago Manual of Style. Don't get took by shishi tricks, stuff Paris and New York. Sophistication doesn't mix with pizza, beer, and pork. Forget that silk and leather thong they fawned on in Milan. On local loins, it would look wrong. They need a grander plan. Those suits that hang so loose in Rome, pinch shoulders buff with clout. Our local tailor's rule, sweet home Chicago means let out. So cool off, hot couturier, prowl elsewhere with your wiles. Like Sandberg says, we're sturdier than jerks who wear your styles. And like John Mella, I grew up in Chicago, Illinois, and not far from the Chicago and Northwestern Railroad tracks. Chicago was and is a rail hub. So on the theme provided by William Carlos Williams, no ideas, but in things, I want to read for you Train of Thought. It lacks a designation. It leaves a plume of smoke. It knows no destination, departed as a joke. Its passengers are sleeping. The fireman just died. The engineer is keeping the throttle open wide. The mail car is burning. A crate of hooch explodes. The driving rods keep churning. The flat cars heave their loads. Conductors prowl the aisles, their lemur eyes aglow at farmers' daughters' profiles in every seventh row. In boxcars, ruined bankers are chanting songs of Blake's, while cattle cars and tankers hiss mating calls of snakes. The switchman is a liar, the flagman is a drunk, the brakeman took a flyer, the watchman's in a trunk. As renegades and spoilers try taking up the slack, the engine blows its boilers and nearly jumps the track. The children in their cradles, the oranges in their crates, the porters with their ladles rip past striped clanging gates. Ahead no lantern signals, the next bridge has a crack. A red bandana wriggles, its wearer balls the jack. A station across the river announces train on time. The trestle gives a shiver, the whistle's pealings climb, and pending fraught arrivals, the baggage shifts and groans, with tents bound for revivals, and hoppers filled with stones. Do I have time for one more short one?
Sure.
Thank you. This is from Light 46. Waiting for Godot. At 8:16, no tramps are here. What's wrong? No ushers, no. We'll give them till 8:20, dear, and then write off this show. You're so impatient. Wait a while. This isn't just some skit. Remind me why. The wit, the style. That's it, let's go. They sit. Thank you.
Oh, Dan, thank you so much. That was a wonderful reading, and it was exciting for me to hear you read for the first time. So thank you very much.
I thank you for the invitation. It's wonderful to be a part of this lineup. I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Well, it's wonderful to have you. Thanks again. All right, our next reader. Please unmute yourself, Susan McLean. Okay, Susan McLean has 3 poetry books: The Best Disguise, The Whetstone Misses the Knife, and a book of translations of over 500 of the Latin poet Martial's satirical poems, selected epigrams. Susan, welcome.
Thank you. And thanks to Melissa and to Light for sponsoring this reading. It's been a real bright spot in my Sundays. My first poem is called Decline and Fall. Now that some friends, through spills and slips, have had a rash of broken hips, I tell them when I write or call, I hope you have a lovely autumn. Some of my poems are inspired by news stories. When I saw the headline of this one, I immediately thought, wow, I'd like to hear the explanation for that. The poem is called Vatican Outlaws Gluten-Free Communion Wafers. Body and soul are fed by wheat, the Bible tells us. Jesus ate wheat bread, so that's what we must eat for him to transubstantiate. Low gluten wafers there may be, so long as they have wheat as well. But Jesus can't be gluten-free. You celiacs can go to hell. After 30 years of being a professor of English, a lot of my inspiration is from literature, obviously. So the next one is an insurance actuary critiquing T.S. Eliot's The Waste Land. Statistically speaking, April is not the cruelest month. We know what records of mortality convey. In January, the greatest number go. From June through late September, death rates slow, and suicide most often peaks in May. April is not the cruelest month. We know diseases rise when temperatures are low. Flu and pneumonia carry hordes away in January. The greatest number go in months most known for freezing rain and snow. Deaths peak near New Year's Day. It's safe to say April is not the cruelest month. We know that March's deaths are second highest, though its Ides are not especially known to slay. In January, the greatest number go. December's deaths rank third. The records show that Christmas Eve is quite a deadly day. April is not the cruelest month, we know. In January, the greatest number go. My next two poems I call Creature Feature. They were inspired by Ed Shackley's poems in The Blind Loon, a Bestiary, which you really ought to read if you want to see some amusing invented characters that are oddly familiar. The first poem is The Elusive Typo. Adept at self-concealment with its camouflaging coat, it lurks in every memo, email, document, and quote, snickering in your face, disguised as what you thought you wrote. Its letters shift their places with a skill near acrobatic, perplexing the dyslexic, maladroit, and astigmatic, and muddling every message with distracting verbal static. It multiplies like stinging flies. You'll seldom find a loner. Sometimes it's fun, an unmeant pun. More often, it's a groaner. It gives and gives. The typo is a universal donor. And its companion piece is The Hidden Agenda. They're docile beasts' agendas, doing what they're told to do. They stand in order, row on row, and never jump the queue, expiring with a sigh as each in sequence is struck through. But like the possum, wombat, wallaby, and kangaroo, agendas are marsupial. From pouches where they grew, their young emerge unbidden, and hostilities ensue. As tough and mean as wolverines and harder to subdue, the offspring are relentless and committed to a coup. They want to make some emendations. You and you and you. My next title is self-explanatory. Emily Dickinson becomes an honorary Kardashian. I'm somebody. Who are you? Are you somebody too? If not, shut up and watch. I live off nobodies, like you. How dreary to be nobody, without a fan online, whose life is not a spectacle, whose home is not a shrine. It was interesting to learn that Edgar Allan Poe said that the most poetic subject is the death of a beautiful young woman. My next poem is Morbid Interest. How unpleasant to meet Mr. Poe. It gives a young lady a chill when just as she's saying hello, he asks if she's lately been ill. It was mid-afternoon, yet he seemed to be tipsy or mildly sedated. How oddly his mournful eyes gleamed when he heard that we might be related. He muttered some rhymes for my name, saying nothing could be more inspiring to a poet desirous of fame than the sight of young beauties expiring. Then he asked if I had a bad cough or a semi-conversible crow. I informed him of where to get off. How unpleasant to meet Mr. Poe. Thank you.
Is that your last poem, Susan? It's, thank you. Thank you so much. Wonderful reading. And it seems like every week we get a theme developing. This week it seems to be setting readers right straight on the month of April. So thank you. That was great. And I can't believe we're at our last reader. Very excited to welcome Alexandra Oliver. Alexandra was born in Vancouver. Her most recent collection, Let the Empire Down, from the Oasis in 2016, was shortlisted for the 2017 Pat Lowther Memorial Award. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. Her previous collection, Meeting the Tormentors in Safe Way, was a Canadian Poetry Book of the Year by the, was named a Canadian Poetry Book of the Year by the National Post, and won the, tell me how to pronounce it this time, Pat Lowther?
Pat Lowther. Pat Lowther.
Thank you.
Lowther.
Award. Thank you. Alexandra Oliver is the co-editor of Random House / Everyman's Measure for Measure, an anthology of poetic meters, and she has served as co-editor of Canadian formalist journal, The Rotary Dial. She is a PhD candidate in English and Cultural Studies at McMaster University. Alexandra, please take it away.
Thank you for having me, Melissa. Hi, everyone. Hi from Canada, Canada in the house. I'm going to begin with, I had a friend years and years ago, and her test when she had a new beau was to send him out in the morning after a night of amour to get milk and stuff from the corner store, but wearing a cape, just a cape. And this poem is called Test Cape. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Test Cape. I've landed on a way to try you out and gauge your mettle. Please, put on this cape. It's far too late to think about escape. I'd like you now to venture out without your other clothes. The cape will have to do. Go down to Omar's Maxi Milk and buy a pack of Belmont Milds, and would you try to see if they have raisin bread? Milk too. When you reach across to get the change, contrive a little conversation. Muse about the way the Raiders always lose. Say thank you. Take your time and rearrange your stuff inside the bag, and please try not to panic. You'll need Herculean force to pull it off. You are aware, of course, it's August and it's criminally hot. And Omar has that huge electric fan he borrowed from the film set just last week. If you are not arrested as a freak, I'll know you are no ordinary man. This is a series, thank you, of epigrams written for the Asses of Parnassus. And I live in the suburbs of Toronto, and there's a particular kind of Southern Ontario matron, yoga pants, lots of fillers, a bit of ornamental systemic racism. And this is the kind of person, they're everywhere, but I had a few people in mind, and they were kind of brought together in the character of Mrs. K. So I have some epigrams about Mrs. K from the Asses of Parnassus. Here's the first one. Mrs. K, social climber. She's going to take a minute now to waffle about her neighbors, CEOs galore. Thank God there's no one poor. The poor are awful. Your fantasies are vivid and unlawful. Wild boar, a school of peckish lampreys, pamphlet-waving Marxist vigilantes, her husband's secretary's lilac panties. Mrs. K, coronavirus hoarder. She's gone ahead and posted on the gram a shot of her with 87 packs of toilet roll. I feel so evil, damn. But if we reconsider all the facts, the purchase is a well-considered call. She is the biggest asshole of them all. Mrs. K, girl's girl. It's girls' night at the home of Mrs. K, where women meet to gargle Chardonnay. They tag their night with sisters, posse, blessed, but stifle schadenfreude, spite, repressed. I'm so relieved I've never been a guest. Mrs. K, patriot. Mrs. K, patriot. Oh, by the way, We the North is the slogan for the basketball team in Toronto, the Raptors, but it's kind of been appropriated as the Canadian kind of Yahoo, We the North, you know, it's a type, right? Mrs. K, patriot. Has any woman ever loved this land more than her? I'll take a stab at never. We the North is more than just a brand. It asks that you be neither kind nor clever, but wave the maple like you have a fever, give the veiled cashier the hairy eyeball, and lock the driveway gates up after nightfall. Mrs. K, lover. It's date night and the kids are at their cousins'. The candles have been fired up in dozens. She's got her get-up on. She's smoking hot. Let's follow what they... Change my mind. Let's not. Mrs. K. Mrs. K, coronavirus morale booster. She thinks it would be game and just the thing to mount the upper balcony and sing, to let the CEOs and dentists feel their need for solidarity is real. But taking care of business out of tune goes over like a Gucci lead balloon. Gabba, cord. Right now. Sorry, I'm about to die. Mrs. K, clean eater. Loaded down with tempeh, hemp, and kale, some juices for a cleanse. She loves the taste. She finds me buying wagon wheels on sale and eyes my load, lip curling, hatchet-faced. Yes, my darling, all of it is dirty. I'll eat it all. That's why I'm so purty. Come on. Here comes my tech. My computer's about to die. Yeah, this is my tech. I have it's desperate when you start getting the 14-year-olds to do everything for you. How do I turn it on? Okay, thank you. Melissa, do I have time for one more?
Yes.
Sure.
One more mini one? Okay. This one is actually about Gavra, but when he was 7, it's about tapeworms. Job proposal for Gavra, age 7, who has just been given a 452-page science almanac. Today, while going to the shops, you told your dad and me about the tapeworm cycle, how each untested pork chop means survival. Thrilled to teach.
Alexandra?
You would not be controlled. Yes.
Oh, hi. I just was wondering if you could start that one over, just the text of the poem. You kind of went out for a few seconds. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, Melissa.
No, it's okay.
Job proposal for Gavra, age 7, who has just been given a 452-page science almanac. The whole poem's not 452 pages, don't worry. Today, while going to the shops, you told your dad and me about the tapeworm cycle, how each untested pork chop means survival. Thrilled to teach, you would not be controlled. We got the full meal deal. You had the feeding habits down, the Skolek seeking tenure in the gut's sweet, fleshy, floral pasture, the weight loss, faintness, and suspicious bleeding. Next time we're in a room of lurching boars, discussing stocks or Taylor Swift's last show, or why their past liaisons never gelled. I'll pay you $50 for 3 whole hours to tell the bastards everything you know, plus bonus when the last one is expelled.
Thank you so much for a terrific reading. And I think you and Bruce Bennett can now duke it out for whose is the most appetizing poem. Is it the tapeworm poem? Is it the Bishop parody? I don't know. Show of hands, which one? Bishop or Oliver? I don't know. Anyway, great reading. Thank you so much. I wanted to alert all of you readers. There have been lovely comments coming in through the chat. People are loving your poems. Be sure to check that out while you're still here. These have been terrific readings, and thank you, tech support in Canada. That worked out very well. Tech support here also. So anyway, thank you so much to all of the readers. I'm going to read one more time our roster for next week, June 7th, same time, same bat station, 3 p.m. Eastern. We will have Catherine Chandler, Pat D'Amico, Juliana Gray, Max Gutman, Bob McKenty, and David Yezi. Thank you so much, everyone. Anybody wants to stick around to chat for a minute? That's incredibly welcome. That's it for my part. So thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. It's great.
Thank
Another
you,
great reading.
Melissa.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.